Well, welcome to Montana Voices Podcast, episode 46, 45. I'm not sure, but...
You have 44 written on the document here. No, you have 44 written on one of the pages here, and then it's titled 45.
It's probably 45. They're copy and pasted from the last document. So, since we are doing this without Bryce, this is the... Actually, no, I've done a cast without Bryce before in the past. It was Hotel Cast, I think, long time ago. But since Bryce isn't here, I will run us through our business here real quick. Of course, our main website, where you're likely listening to this, and it's also where we're pulling the feed if you're listening to it on your podcasting app of choice, Montana Voices Podcast, wherever fine podcasts are sold, including iTunes, everything but Spotify. Everything but Spotify.
I was just going to make a comment about that.
Yes.
You talk about, you can pull it from whatever podcast you want, as long as it's not Spotify.
By design, we could be on Spotify if we. It's an application process, and I took about 30 seconds to look at it and decided, no, this is not for us. They're trying to ruin podcasting, in my opinion. But we, of course, have a Twitter.
You're just upset because you didn't get the Joe Rogan deal. That's all.
Oh, geez. Well, I don't know if there was a Joe Rogan deal. I don't know if I can turn that down. But
right. I mean. Sorry, I you and I were talking beforehand about getting completely derailed, and here I am monkey wrenching you right now. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, here I am on a high horse saying we're all virtuous and everything's open source and we're doing this for the people, but $20 is $20. So
what if they offered to pay you in Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Oh, even better, Bitcoin, where you over the all-time high, 20 grand. We're back down to 18. So if you're looking to buy, now's the time to buy. Mark my words, I think we'll be seeing 30K before the year's end. So
you're probably not wrong. I wish you were wrong, but I think you're right. I honestly do.
In another side chat, me and you were discussing earlier in the day how there was a time back in 2012 where I just gave away a Bitcoin to a friend to try to pique his interest in Bitcoin. I gave away an entire Bitcoin, and at that time the market, we had a really big bull run up to 100, and then it went back down to 15. It really crashed, and if I had held on to that coin, I could sell it for about $18,000 today. But
you know what? I've got an interesting story on that one, but do we want to do introductions really quick?
Let's do that. Let me finish the business here. Twitter is @Montana_Voices. Our Facebook is @Montana Voices Podcast. YouTube is Montana Voices Podcast, where we have the finest random B-roll that I shoot. And introductions. I, of course, am Jimmy, and I am on. We brought him back by popular demand, by request. People requested you, Chris.
Wow. How high was the volt total? What was it, more than single digits?
It was several. We got some tweets. I got some text messages about this, like on my phone.
I'll accept that. I'll accept votes in SMS. That's great. I like it.
Yeah, so we are back with Chris from Full Mana Gaming. I'll give you a chance here to plug your channel.
Mana Online, actually. Correction. On YouTube it's Full Mana Gaming, but officially it's been rebranded to Mana Online, so you'll find me at twitch.tv/Mana Online. Or on Twitter. Yes, I am on Twitter. It is as much of a cesspool as everybody thinks that it is, but I'm one of those people that likes to watch a train wreck live. You can find me there at ManaOnline_.
You have yet to be banned from Twitter, so congrats on that.
It's coming. Come on, man. It's 2020. It's 2020, man. The great banning is coming. Okay.
Have you heard of Parler?
Oh man, Parler. Yes, I have heard of Parler. I am so conflicted on Parler. So okay, so it's the big place where a lot of people are going in social media, right? You get,
I wouldn't say a lot.
You get booted off.
Several, probably.
Well, okay. But. Well, there's a lot of prominent figures that were either booted from Facebook or Twitter or have reduced impressions on those platforms, and they've gone over to Parler. It's got a lot of financial backing. You got big stars like Dan Bongino sponsoring it. But I'm also seeing a lot of people in the coding world and security world who say that Parler's code is an absolute mess right now. And, I kind of take that with a grain of salt. I've looked at Parler. I haven't made the jump yet. I'm still kind of on the fence about it.
So it's coming.
I'm very interested to see where social media is going to go in 2021. However the election plays out here, right now we're in, what is it? Robert Barnes said we're in Act 2 of the play right now. So
Well,
we'll see where things go with social media and such if we have a new administration in 2021.
well, who knows? Maybe we'll do the American thing where we somehow we attract monopolies here in this country, and then we decide to regulate them, like our Montana Power. See how that worked out. So let's let's dive into the business here,
Yeah.
or not the
Yeah,
business,
let's do
our
it.
list, our list. I had a few notes here about something we discussed on the last cast. I didn't have
Yeah.
extensive notes on what it was. I didn't go back to review it, but we have the aquatic park and the election not being over, which are probably even
Yeah,
more
we can
relevant
start
than our current topics. So,
They well, in a lot of ways they are. So I mean, like, recording today, we're recording at 10:04 p.m. on Friday the 11th right now, and just a few hours ago, the Supreme Court turned down the state of Texas's request to file a suit against Pennsylvania, Georgia et al.
and we joined
And
that lawsuit, right? Montana did.
we Montana did join, or did file an amici brief, basically saying that the case Montana. I didn't actually read Montana's document, but as it was explained to me, Montana wasn't sure that the case itself had merit, but they felt like that Texas should be allowed to at least make its case, and I felt that was fair.
All right, we live in
So,
polarized times, so you're.
Yeah,
mean,
and I think
you can't question these
just
things.
To dive.
Oh, go ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say, just to kind of dive right into it. There's a lot. I've been, as a person who streams and kind of I at least exist in the social media circles. I've been watching a lot of reaction to it here, and I think here's the way that I see that a lot of people are thinking that, like, Trump is getting skunked here. And while a lot of the lawsuits are failing, but they're not, the majority of them are not failing on merit. And that, I think, is the big, I think if there is going to be any chance, in my personal opinion, of there being a chance for there to be genuine healing, there has to at least be a court that at least hears the merits of the case, because they're all getting dismissed for lack of standing, getting dismissed for laches. When the Texas suit was filed earlier this week, a lot of the legal scholars, I should say, legal commentators that I followed, felt it was roughly like 45-55 in favor that SCOTUS would not accept the case because of standing. And the big thing that I'm taking away from this is, and a lot of the people on the right now are asking, it's like, well, we hear all of these stories about election fraud out there, and I personally would love to have some of these people who are making allegations, and such, be put on a stand, sworn, put under oath, and be allowed to be cross-examined. I feel like if the case can't be made there, then it is extremely fair to say that they've at least been heard. And right now, that seems to be the big bugaboo on the right, is that they're feeling like they're not getting heard. Now, the Texas case is not the only one that is pending right now. There are actually, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is actually hearing. It is actually I don't know if it's a hearing on the merits or not, but they're going to be holding a hearing tomorrow on the Republican lawsuit in that area there, or in Wisconsin. And I know that there's a few others kind of crawling through the courts there as well too. But I think I really think that there's something that the right needs to keep its eye on, if we're being or some sort of self-reflection that needs to be kept in check here, or at least needs to be realized. Do you have anything to jump in there before I start soliloquying around there as well?
Absolutely. Well, sort of the things coming from the other side. obviously not a Trump fan, and actually on this cast I get kind of far to the right because I have to counter Bryce quite a bit. But now if you want, I feel like I can maybe run through my true
You can
colors
start
here.
drifting back to the left side of the bank there on the river.
Yeah,
sir.
Bernie is my only president. I'll stick with that.
Bernie can still win.
Yeah, there's still a chance if our election was honest, at least in the primary. I will say that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of one thing for me to say that
absolutely
the primary
Bernie got screwed
twice.
He didn't get Ocean's 11. He got robbed at the corner. I'm sorry.
And even though a man of great integrity, say what you will or will not about his politics, understand he uses the term socialism but doesn't actually mean an actual socialism. It's American socialism, which of course will be watered down because that's what we do. But put socialism aside, man of integrity, from any tape you can find from any point in his political career, he has the exact same message and he stuck with it. So in 2016, when he knew he was getting the shaft, and he knew it was not fair, and he knew that perhaps there was some standing for some legal proceedings, he tucked his tail between his legs and endorsed Hillary Clinton, and actually went out and campaigned for him. And even though those Hillary people still blame him for he campaigned hard for Hillary.
Yeah, he did.
And that wasn't good enough. The audacity to challenge Hillary, which I don't understand why people really like her all that much, to be honest. I mean, emails aside and Benghazi aside, just as a candidate, she was extremely flawed and with the history there. But apparently, dynasty is the thing we do in America. Look forward to Ivanka 2020. What is it? 8 now or
no? Actually, Laura Trump is apparently exploring a run for Senate in North Carolina.
Oh joy! But
yeah, no. So the point that I was going to make is, or it was pointed out on, or I think the best take for what happened with Trump is that he got Ocean's 11,
or he lost the election.
No. Hear me out.
Got Ocean's 11, or an overwhelming number of people voted against Trump, which I think it was against because nobody likes Biden.
Hear me out.
Go ahead.
Okay, saying that if it was just a thing about the votes, I would say he got robbed at the corner. What I mean by Ocean's 11, and I did not know this, a lot of this going into the election is that, well, I kind of knew about it, but I didn't really know the extent of what was going on here. So, for example, all throughout this year, one of the big things that happened is that a lot of the voting rules changed, whether it was through consent decrees from lawsuits being brought by the DNC, especially like in Georgia, changed the rules. Then there was the Pennsylvania Senate, changed the rules. Many of these places changed the rules, but they did so with the consent of the Republican Party. And looking back over Trump's 4 years in office, yes, he was very much the bull in the china shop, but the Republican establishment was just as happy to get rid of him as they were as the Democrats were. So it's my personal opinion at a grand level that the Republican Party at the national level did nothing really to help Trump. If they didn't sabotage him, they didn't do anything to outright help him, and he didn't really do a whole lot to help himself. Like over the 4 years in office, he made a lot of enemies, and a lot of those enemies used the system to split away his allies one at a time, until finally all he had left around him were people that are far more interested in just being in Washington than anybody else. And then the Democrats, and the last point I want to make is that I feel like the Democrats, that when they, in my opinion, gave the nomination to Joe Biden, it was a strategy. They gave it to a person who was not going to campaign because one of the big foils against Hillary was Trump. Trump was able to go out there, smash Hillary with her record, and galvanize the base and everything again, and exploit the antagonism that was already present against Hillary. With Joe Biden, who was basically campaigning from his basement, there was nobody for Trump to campaign against, and I felt like he had a really hard time, galvanizing a lot of people who would otherwise not want to vote for him because of his very boisterous style. And
style, if you call it that. I would call it
I do.
ham-fistedness in everything.
Yeah.
But
Well, like for me, I was getting very kind of concerned with the way that Trump was stirring up a lot of animosity because he's got that Queen's attitude. Like everybody gives Trump a lot of crap for his attitude without really realizing what it's like to grow up in the boroughs in New York. That's where it comes from. And if you're it
I
basically
wouldn't
when
say
you were
the
growing up,
boroughs for Trump. I mean, it was a
you grew up in
tower.
Queens.
I mean,
Well, I've heard the story told multiple times. I mean, okay, right, he was a rich kid, but he still grew up in Queens, and Queens, each of the boroughs in New York has its own culture, right? He grew up in the culture of Queens,
so everybody from
and
Queens is an asshole? So,
right?
I mean, that's sort of what
I'm
you're
not.
saying.
I'm not going to say that. You're putting words in my mouth, good sir. You're putting words.
You're saying
you are
he has
putting
the
words in my
Queen's
mouth.
personality, and I mean, I
He's
know
a very
other people
strong,
from Queens,
arrogant, boisterous personality. Yes.
which does not define
Now,
everybody from Queens, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, let's disagree on that one. Again, I'm going by what I've heard from people who know him. And
Although I will agree that people that have the audacity to not live in Montana, yeah, all assholes. So maybe can agree on that.
yeah, I think we can agree on that one. And ultimately, Trump's. I feel like the way that Trump was running his administration, especially these last few years, would be more typical of a president who's already won re-election, who's in his second term and is already on his way out the door. Right at that point, it's just kind of like whatever. Who cares? I mean, when you're not running for re-election, what's the worst they can do to you, right?
Right.
You're going to be gone in January. You're going to be gone on January 20th.
Well,
And I felt like he tried to shake up too much of the machine too quickly, and the machine just turned the process against him.
it's always the machine.
And then,
It's
of
the
course-
same machine we saw
well,
with Bernie, in my opinion. But
What's that?
just real quick,
Yeah.
We'll steer this back towards Montana here in a second. But
Sure.
Well, leave it to Trump. That I don't, being not a lawyer, I don't see these cases going anywhere. I think Biden is our, for better or worse, our next president. I will congratulate Trump for the last 4 years on a booming economy that boomed despite COVID and is apparently, by the numbers, still doing awesome. Blows my mind.
Well, it's like a K recovery is what it was told. A lot of sectors are doing good, but many others are not.
I mean, they're kind of holding on, and I feel a bust coming up. And if you maybe look at some of the spending habits of people in the top 1%, they aren't. They're saving up for a fire sale, which is coming up, I think. So
Yeah. Yep.
This
Absolutely.
bubble will pop, and it will pop in the next administration. And I look forward to Democrats being blamed for the economy once again.
As is tradition.
Yes, happened with Obama. Clinton turned it around. The good Clinton. Oh, I'll note that. But back to Montana. You got some news in your neck of
Yeah.
the woods. Something about an aquatic park that's, you see,
Oh.
we built our first aquatic
Yeah,
park
okay.
in the swamp, and it sank. And then,
Yeah. That's exactly how I explained it to other people too. So what happened here in Great Falls? It was a big thing here where they got where the city of Great Falls got a grant from the DoD that essentially foots half the bill for a new recreation and swim center.
about 10 million,
The
right?
idea being, yeah. So the idea of the center is that it's going to be near the base. It's going to be used by airmen to conduct their exercise trainings and stuff like that, as well as be a place where citizens of Great Falls or civilians. Civilians is the word I was looking for. Civilians can also use it as well. The idea being that this is going to be what ultimately replaces the NAT. No,
It was the natatorium. Was that completely shut
It
down?
was the
yet,
Nat, yeah.
or-
yeah, it's completely shut down. So ironically, the net shut down because the soils can't hold the building. So what happens is that the city gets the grant, right? They've already picked out the spot. They've already got architecture plans and everything ready to go.
I
So
understand
as
there
soon as
was
they get
some
the
drama
money-
about that as well.
What's that?
There was some drama about that as well.
Yes, right. There's
we'll go back to
trust
the
me,
architecture
anything to do
plans.
with the city is there's draw. Yeah, we covered that on the last episode actually.
Oh, we talked about
But
the beat off, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
these episodes all run together. But
Sometimes, well, they're a long conversation, is what they are, and I'm completely okay with that.
and
So,
that's exactly why we
the-
made the cast, to have a long conversation and discover that we're not so far apart, basically.
I'd like to believe that, absolutely, and I do believe that. So, but getting back to the center. So, the irony is that the city, as soon as they got the money, then they conducted soil samples of where they wanted to build, and they found that the bedrock is 60 feet below the surface. So it literally, if they were to build the center, it would sink. And I'm not allowed to say why I am not surprised by this, but this isn't the first time that something like that has happened here in the city. And it's really impacted people. So literally what would happen is that if you take it to the scene in Monty Python, the Holy Grail, where they've got the FM guy who wants to just sing in the tower all day. His father comes up and he talks about how this castle stood in the swamp and then it sank. And then you know what? We built it up again, and then that one sank too. But by golly, the third one, it stood tall. And I mean, that's literally what we're looking at here. Is that the bedrock and everything is so far down that they would have to completely overhaul the foundation of the building. And so now they're having to look at either relocating where they're going to build, or they're going to have to basically cut it down in size because they need all the money to spend on the foundation.
Ooh, that's both tough decisions.
When I read the whole thing about the soil samples, I'm just thinking to myself, did nobody really think to do a soil sample? I really want to know I want to know who's responsible for this.
I think that's a question for the city commission, and maybe the concerns that a certain individual brought up about his architecture firm, the guy who owns an architecture firm and a online newspaper rag at best in Great Falls, who uses said newspaper rag, or I don't know, it's not a rag because it's all digital, but use that platform. Tabloid, use that to complain about the fact that essentially they didn't ask him to be an architect on the job. So maybe some credence to that. But that's a question for your city commission, I think. They probably dropped the ball on that. And given that Great Falls, I know of numerous areas that have had some issues with bedrock or the lack thereof, and soil settling.
Clay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Issues like that. A lot of people aren't allowed to talk about.
Well, the city's excuse is that they didn't have money to do a soil sample until they got the grant. And to me, I'm like, how could you submit a proposal for this facility without having done a soil sample analysis to know if you could even build the dang place?
I mean, isn't a soil sample only a couple $1,000s? Maybe I'm underestimating here.
Well,
but the city doesn't have that.
Let's be real. They didn't say how much that it cost, and I'm not an expert in this area. I don't know what it would cost to do that, but I would, just to me as a taxpayer in this city, I think to myself, why? I'm like, there had better be a damn good excuse for this other than, well, we just didn't have the money for this. I'm like, you didn't want to spend money on making sure that I'm going to be genuinely shocked if this thing even gets built. Because to me, I'm not a soils engineer. I'm not a person who works with grants or anything, but I would be very concerned if I were a city commissioner right now that the DOD might find out about this stuff and yank the grant.
Very, very likely. Like I would be surprised as well if it got built. It's sort of the Great Falls way of holding a carrot in front of your face. This town is not going to suck any longer. We're getting a aquatic facility, but then somehow pulling it out from under you.
Well, I mean, it's like the city does need something like this, or something like that to exist. It really does. I also know that there's also some very creative businesses that are getting built up and getting ready to open in 2021, and the city desperately needs some innovation. It needs something to bring people together to this city, rather other than healthcare or the base.
If only there was
That
something a few years ago that would be a mass employer in the entire region. If only there was some project like that was really interested in Great Falls.
weren't you talking about? You talking about like the slaughterhouse?
Yeah, that's the one.
There were. I heard a lot of concern. I heard a lot of things on both sides there, and the people that were against it made some very compelling arguments, in my opinion.
About low wages or
On
something, or they sink?
Wages were one, the type of people that would be employed there, but more importantly, the big thing that the slaughterhouse was going to need was going to have to tap our underground water, our underground, what do they call it?
Aquifer?
Aquifer, yeah. And basically, it was just going to dry. It was going to dry the whole dang thing out over time.
I did not hear of the aquifer concerns, but there is a river there. It seems like they could get water there if they need it.
And not only that, it's the a slaughterhouse does not smell great. Well, let's be
Industry
real.
rarely
So,
does.
yeah. So to me, okay, yes, we could argue that yes, it would employ people, but
A lot of people.
Great
Slaughterhouse wages are between 16 and 20 an hour for an entry level position, which is
Yeah.
pretty good for Great Falls, I think.
Yeah, it is, but it feels to me like with the way that we have it in Great Falls, we have infrastructure in place to have higher level education for higher skilled workers. They're getting ready to build the medical college so that we can actually start training doctors here. They're adding on to I don't know what MSU calls the old College of Tech anymore. They call it some weird, strange name. I'm sorry. I don't care what they call it. It's always going to be MSU COT to me.
Or the college behind Target.
Yeah, the one behind Target.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, they are building in an expansion to the campus right now. So for the, I believe it was the dental hygienist clinic. So I mean, we've got a system in place to train people, and if we had employment opportunities for them here in town, we could maybe keep them here in town, or at the very least in the state. And I don't see a lot of desire to do that outside of the medical field. And to me, that's a long-term concern for me, because then the city is going to wind up just basically drawing in people who are, if you're not working in medical, you don't come here, or if you don't need if you don't need the medical services, you don't come here. That's my big concern.
Well, it is the only big hospital within a couple hundred miles, at least till Missoula.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the High Line, they have little clinics. I mean, it's big. It's
Benefice is the regional medical, or if I remember right, it's called the Regional Medical Center for Central Montana.
Well, since we're talking about healthcare, let's, I guess, segue into a thing on everybody's mind. What was it, 2 weeks, 14 days to flatten the curve? Which day of that?
I think we're now on 250 days to to curb the spread, or something like that.
And recent advisories from Bullock are every county, regardless of the count, must limit 10 or something, or 50 for a large facility, something like that, and then everybody has to wear a mask. That's going great in most places. That's sarcasm there, Chris. So, but
wow, thanks for spelling it out for me. I can't see your face, so please continue.
Biden seems to think we'll be able to do a 100-day mask order for the entire country, and good luck with that. You saw how well the statewide and city ones went, or are going.
Well, okay, they're, for the most part, they are okay. So this is sort of the thing. This is my concern with, like, okay, so we have the mandates in place. Just about everywhere I go, I see people wearing the masks. And I think to myself, okay, so now you're just going to say we're going to continue to do what we're doing for another 100 days. Okay, cool. I don't see how that's going to change anything that is going on right now.
Well, do it on a national level, and I think states such as Montana and, the very right-leaning states might rebel on that specific point. So that
I think they should. I have been a fan of the idea that especially when it comes to cases and stuff like that, rules and restrictions. It does need to be a state and county level decision.
Well,
Now,
Biden disagrees.
so
And
well,
furthermore,
yeah.
our new upcoming governor, Greg the Body Gianforte, says it's a matter of personal responsibility. So he likely will not have a mandate or a mask order of any sort, and would likely revoke the ones that are already in place. Is sort of the feeling I've gotten. He's only spoken a few times since elected, so far it's going great.
I don't know. For me and my day job, it wouldn't change anything. If we have a different rule set that we have to follow, and it's hard for me, for somebody who has some very strong opinions about this, to say, I mean, is it doing something? Maybe. But right now, whether I personally agree with it or not, it's having an effect on the mental state of just about everyone around me. Adults, children, everything like that. My own daughter is flat out told me that she's basically at her wit's end, because she doesn't want to stay at school any longer than she has to, even though sometimes she has to stay at hands out there. And she just does not like it, and we're holding as best as we can. And it just, like, it doesn't, I guess the point that I'm making is that it doesn't matter what I think. There's going to be people who are going to be making these decisions and telling me what to do. There's nothing I can do about it. And that's about it. That to me just leaves me feeling very helpless about this whole thing, because I knew from the moment that these mandates started coming out that they were going to be a political football. There was just no way. And now that it is, and now that we have likely have a change in administration coming, there's just a lot of uncertainty that surrounds that, and that just adds to the stress of the whole situation.
Lots of stress. Montana does not have its 2020 suicide and homicide numbers out yet, but I don't predict a good swing on that.
No. Nate, from what I don't have official stats in front of me here, so I'm gonna have to. I
don't think they're out yet for 2020. I don't think we do it month to month. It's released a year in the future of a report on mental health in the state or something.
It's not just the fact that you got to remember too that the mental health component has also come from the fact of job losses, people being in lockdown, or the people who are, like, for example, in my particular family, my wife has not worked for like over a year now. And like just before these whole mandates were coming around, she was starting to look for another job again. And then now all of a sudden that's been taken away. And now we're going to be told we're going to be doing this whole masking thing. She's very much of the opinion, like, I don't, she's not sure that she can really handle that. So that creates a whole series of helplessness. But I also look at some people who work in like service industry, restaurant industry, areas where they have to, where they do a lot of interaction with the public, and a lot of those jobs are down, they're seeing a lot of reduced hours, and whether we call it socialism or not, people, the fact that we're being told by the government,
giving people money, so we're not doing that apparently.
Well, and again, the big argument that I have is like the government is telling us we can't work for the good of the people. We can't work, but they're not providing a means by which for people to be able to at least pay the bills.
We can agree on something here, Chris. Unbelievable.
What's that?
I said, are we going to agree on something here? I mean, Canada gives people through their law. I don't know if it's discontinued. I'm not caught up on Canadian news because, polite Canadians, it's a myth. Episode 30 something, but
yeah, I mean, like I said, to me, it's always, like I said, I'm
$1,000 a month.
Typically, very much. I'm very much like the government. Get GTFO out of my life. But if the government is going to tell me I can't work, and potentially put the force of law on me to say I can't work, I say fine, you're paying my bills then. I mean, that's otherwise you're going to wind up with pretty much what we already have right now, which is people basically flipping the bird and see, it's not so much of a problem in this state, but in states like California, you can see rampant hypocrisy regarding these mandates and stuff like that. And
you're talking Gavin Newsom's fundraiser.
Well, there's also. Did you see the video of the woman who had it was a restaurant called the Pineapple Grill?
No, I did not.
She basically she had a restaurant that was right across the street from a movie shoot. She was basically told that she can't have people any closer than, or she had like all of her tables like 7 feet away, and literally right across the street there was basically a big old movie shoot going up with food tables all right next to each other, people mingling around right next to each other, and it was just it was like there was no better example for people to say hypocrisy.
Well, Montana had the same thing happen. I mean,
really,
or not specifically with movie shoots. I understand what they're doing. It's California. Hollywood productions are a big money maker and an important part of their industry.
Yeah.
Tourism in Montana, it was the same thing to why Bullock didn't shut down the borders, why he put in this, order that you couldn't enforce, out-of-staters quarantine for 2 weeks. And nobody did that.
Yeah.
Nobody did that. And
no.
So an order that wasn't checked, wasn't enforced, and there was no penalties assigned for it either. So, I mean, it's just, why bother? Like the thing.
Yeah.
So we had to pander to the industry for this state. And sort of an argument I made on a previous cast is I would like the state not to rely so heavily on tourism. I understand it's important. We got a great state and there's enough to share with a lot of people. But it shouldn't be our core industry. If we had to shut down tourism for a year, which one might argue would have been the right response to this, then we're not struggling financially after that. But we are. We couldn't do that. So we ended up in the situation where we're all wearing masks right now.
I think that would have happened anyways, regardless, quite honestly. As soon as I started seeing mandates going around across the United States, and also just hearing what I was hearing from from my particular day job, I just knew they were coming. It was an inevitability.
Well, it's coming. Then out-of-staters who, I dislike until proven otherwise. Generally, give them the sideways eye. If you look
I'm sorry. Are you getting xenophobic? Are you saying build the wall? Keep them out?
Yeah, Jimmy. We need to build the wall on the northern border. That's who we need to keep out.
I like it.
But with the, if you look at what our outbreak areas were, it was areas that have a high immigrant. I'll say immigrant. They're all Americans, but a high population that only spends half the year. You had Lake County, which has Polson, which is a reservation, which is for some reason 60% white.
Wow! Wait a minute.
Yeah, 60%
That's
non-native.
an interesting stat to point out.
Well, they got the lake, they got Polson, it's all recreation over there. Most of the residents in Polson, as I understand, don't live there during winter. They got the snowbirds and whatever. And then Bozeman also had another outbreak. Missoula areas, except for that, I guess Shelby had an incident in the old folks' home over there, but not counting that, which might just be an outlier, places like Great Falls and, of course, smaller towns, even Butte, that's not where the virus came from. It came from people coming in from out of state and bringing it. People coming to Montana to escape the virus brought it here.
Escaped the virus, or just came here as part of their normal travel routine or work or whatever. Because I know that in the beginning of the year, there was a law enforcement conference that was traced as like an epicenter of, God, what county was that? Yellowstone County, I want to say it was.
Was it Hill County? There was a big fest up there in March.
Yeah, it was the reason why I point out is because it took that it was like a nationwide law enforcement conference where they had law enforcement officers coming in from all over the United States, and it took place. And then it ended, and that's when the lockdown. I think that's when the travel restrictions started going into place. So it all happened like right before all of this.
So we can blame the police.
Right before all the restrictions went down.
Blaming the police. I love it, Chris. So,
God.
Yeah.
Well, we do have an article about it. Let's go.
Oh yeah. Well, it's time to. We are 40 minutes into this thing, and We haven't even gotten to the first thing on the list.
Yeah, dude, you've got me for 2-3 hours if you want me. I don't care.
That'll be a long one. We try to keep it at least under an hour, so we'll zoom through these. There's a new sex trafficking or any trafficking hotline.
Good.
It's new, and there's a number for it. I don't know. Nobody's listening to this to get the number. All of our listeners in their car are getting out their pads to write it down. But that is where you can report.
They're not grabbing their cell phones. They are definitely not grabbing their cell phones to write down this number or type in this number.
But there is, and what they're exactly going to do with that and what function it serves. Obviously, if you're in immediate danger, I shouldn't need to tell you to call 911. That's why we invented 911, after all.
Yeah.
So, but this is a report anonymously tips, and that is, I think, important. And we'll have a future episode on this about Native Lives Mattering. I know you can't even say that without being political. Let me. Geez. You can say Native. I will say Native Lives Matter. That needs to be a sticker too. Of course. I mean, Black lives as well. I'm not sure how relevant that is in Montana, as I think we have the least blacks. I don't know what the numbers are, but was very small. Not a lot. It was very small. In the New Orleans, we had a lot of national refugees that came up here, or at least a lot of people I know.
You can call them refugees, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they literally got all their homes washed away, and that, yeah.
So I don't know what the numbers increased, but I think they definitely did. All right, so state budget. Tim Fox disagrees on the veracity of next year's budget, and I'm thinking our next year budget, due to the pandemic and some other things, is going to be an issue for next year.
I think I know a lot of people who don't really want to get into the minutiae of it. The big thing that stood out for me when I was going through this article was that apparently we're dipping in to the tune of about $75 million on our rainy day fund, leaving about $35 million, if I remember right, was in there. Well, I think but yeah, I really want to see what our budgets are going to start looking like for 22 and 23. That's going to be the real tell.
Right. Well, Gianforte, of course, in the article mentioned that he's, of course, says he's going to lower taxes, but historically, Republicans may or may not do that. I know Trump kind of did a little bit for, I think, all of us, but I think he used the exception rather than the rule on that one. But with a
there's not much to say right now. We have to wait and see what happens with the Gianforte administration
next year. But we're also getting money from Big Tobacco. We're finally getting our money out of the tobacco industry.
Well, I think that part of that whole dipping into the rainy day fund was because this was coming. So you might see the headline that says that more than $50 million, quote unquote, more than $50 million arriving before next year's end will help pad Montana's budget. And
I thought that was earmarked for health things and the advertisements.
Yeah,
and teen smoking prevention.
But you got to remember, they can kind of fudge them. I mean, if they bring in $50 million right from this settlement, then they can shift $50 million from somewhere else to replace the funds or something like that. It's accounting games is what that is.
I was surprised that we're still getting money from tobacco. I thought this was handled in the 90s, but
well, it stems from because like when there was that big lawsuit back in the 90s about it, this is like a settlement that forked from that settlement. There was like one master agreement that basically said the tobacco companies nationwide were targeting kids and stuff like that, and then each state
Marlboro Man, the cartoon, was targeting kids. Really?
Yeah. How funny is it to say that right now in this day and age when literally you've got influencers on YouTube hawking all kinds of stupid crap at kids. And like these companies would love to get away with what I see some of these influencers on YouTube and such are showing.
Something I never understood is influencing, and I guess people just need something to worship, I guess, because they attract themselves to these figures.
You know what? If you want to keep this under an hour, then we can, and then maybe we can revisit this on another episode. But yeah, I would love to talk to you and the audience there about basically about the influencing industry and kind of my experience with it.
All right, real quick on numbers here. I guess $10 million of this $50 million that has been withheld from us, which and interest, we're getting interest from them too, is going to the general fund. A lot of it's going to CHIP and tobacco programs and such. So what was that state budget rainy day fund. That what was the number on that again?
I think I think they dipped in about 75 mil, if I remember right.
So 10 million
I'm actually
isn't a small
trying to
chunk
look
of
for
that.
the number right now. No, it's not.
It's
and
it's
considering that
something.
Montana has to have a balanced budget, if I remember right.
Well, I thought all states have to have a balanced budget. We're not the federal government.
Yeah,
we don't have our own presses.
Yeah, money printer go brrr.
Oh, that's what we did this year.
Oh, yeah, we did, because what is it? 24% of all dollars right now in circulation were printed in the last year.
Whew. Well, that doesn't bode well for inflation.
No, it does not. No, it does not. And I think I really would I'd say people really should be paying attention to what's going to happen here in the next year or so, because like I said, it is a fact that I think the official number is 24% of all American dollars in circulation right now were basically generated during the last year here. And it's usually anywhere between like 3 and 7% is the usual number. That jumped up to 24. So yeah.
So it's a good time to buy Bitcoin is what you're saying?
I think it's too late to buy Bitcoin, honestly, to get any kind of like return value out of it here. It's the genie is out of the bottle and the time bomb is ticking, because you can't, just as a general fiscal policy, you can't keep printing like that at some point in time. There's going to be an inflationary bubble that's going to pop, and everybody is going to get hurt by that. That's scary.
And if when that happens, I think instead of per the conversation we had earlier, Bitcoin's now worth a little over 18K.
Yeah.
We'll no longer have those discussions. A dollar, it would be a dollar's worth. It'd be the other way around.
Yeah.
So, or it would be the Venezuelan wheelbarrow to buy a loaf of bread, whatever their currency is over there.
Yeah. Look at what happened in Venezuela.
Oh, it's a different topic.
Different topic. So to circle back, one last note: the reason why the statewide hotline number is important is because at a national level there were 11,000 cases of missing persons reported. Those hotlines have extremely long wait times. And so now this hotline is set up specifically to help Montanans to basically cut down on the call volume. They're going to the national level, and then in theory, because it's being reported to a Montana state agency, those reports can percolate a lot quicker, and then we can all be woken up in the middle of the night far more frequently with those Amber Alerts on our phones.
As annoying as they have been at times. I should probably narrow it down a little bit. I've gotten some for eastern Montana, which I'm very far away from. So
yeah,
but
it's all based. If I remember, it's based on your NPX. If I remember right, your area code and exchange.
Huh. Well, then I am not. Well, maybe not. I'm getting Missoula ones as well. So
yeah,
that's on the small chance that I could be of some help. Send it to me at 2 a.m. I'm not complaining about that. It's a inconvenience of life.
I'm poking fun at it is all I'm doing. I'm not making a oh god, stop sending me these alerts. I'm just making fun of it because it's happened to me more than once. And you know me, I have a few extra cell phones around the house. So can you imagine all of those phones going off at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Oh man, I can. And they should work on the vehicle descriptions. You get stuff like, it was a white SUV or crossover. It was like, well, that's just, there's a lot of car guys out there. Are they not getting these details? And it's like, oh, no, it was a Chevy Tahoe, definitely the Z71 with the limited slip rear end, and I think it had the big block. And so are they excluding that info from us? Or because that would be more helpful for me.
If they have it, having talked with people who deal with a lot of this stuff in law enforcement, when these incidents happen, the people who wind up reporting them are always panicked. They're in crisis, and when you're in that heightened state of alert, your attention to detail really drops, and so you just know that something's happened. A kid gets kidnapped or whatever, and you know that happened, right? You're like, oh my God, this kid got kidnapped. I got to call this in. And then as soon as you're talking to the law enforcement officer, you're like, oh shit, what was that license plate? And then all of a sudden now you're bashing yourself on the head. No, I got to remember this license plate. Otherwise this kid may not be found, that sort of thing. So law enforcement a lot of times just has to go with what they're given, and if we don't get a whole lot of details, I don't think anybody's deliberately holding back. I think it's a lot of times people who are coming across these scenarios or these situations for the this type of crisis level in their mind, in mental crisis level, for one of the first times in their lives, and it's one of those things where if you haven't experienced that, you don't know how to remember the important things. Like, set a lot of that aside, note details like vehicle description, plate number, etc.
Well, speaking of law enforcement, we'll talk about defunding the police and what that actually means. And I know we covered this, I think, in detail in a previous cast on that subject, but Missoula now has a crisis group. It's I think they're uniformed or ununiformed. They're not armed, though. So
I'm looking at this article. I do not believe that they are actually uniformed or sworn officers. And a lot of people would, and they are, as they see here, they're marked. Let me see here. This quote is about it right here. It says, Monday marked the inaugural day for the Missoula Cares program, and the mobile support team units will be put to the test, helping stabilize people going through a behavioral health crisis. And after reading this article, I'm actually I'm very in support of this kind of a team, because I'm not going to say how far my connections to law enforcement go, but having talked with them many times, they'll flat out admit, like, look, when we come across people who are having a behavioral crisis, when they see a uniformed officer, everybody goes on defensive, right? So if they come across, so whether the officer has literally done anything at all or not, you see an officer approaching, the hackles go up. And if somebody is already having essentially having one of the worst days of their lives, a cop showing up could in reality put a lot of these people over the edge. So the idea, and that's just for the cop showing up. So what the idea behind this program is that these behavioral health specialists, they will not actually be the first responders to the scene. And that's always been my big bugaboo when we're talking about big cities, talking about defunding their law enforcement. They're talking about having programs like this be the first responder. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's just a time bomb waiting to go off. Well, the idea is that law enforcement will dispatch to the scene first, verify the situation, and make sure that the scene is secure. And then they call in these guys, and they do their job, and they resolve the crisis without having to have an officer try to mediate and resolve the situation.
Well, there are places that are doing it already where they are the first responders in some situations. If there's any question of safety or any need for a use of force, then, of course, the uniformed officer who's able to administer that force, God forbid, is first on the scene for that. But doing it this way, sort of the same way we do with EMTs and the first responders. First responders, police officers. But we covered this sort of in depth in a past one, how defunding the police is not abolishing your police departments, although some places have done that, which is bold move.
Yeah, it's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how that works for him.
But you're right. I mean, the police are a Swiss Army knife.
In 2020, it's important. This kind of stuff is important. They're having, if nothing else, it's another tool in the toolbox of public safety agencies to diffuse situations that come up. And I don't see any reason why a program like this shouldn't exist.
As it should be. I mean, do you need the full uniformed officer at the majority of situations completely not needed? You have any sort of civil complaint, my neighbor's music is too loud. I mean, that doesn't need a guy with a gun most of the time. So we use the police as a Swiss Army knife for every malady, social, economic, anything in our society, any ailment falls on the police historically, which is you can't possibly train for every single one of those events.
No, I'm glad you said that, because that is exactly correct. There have been as cities defund public, assistance programs to people, where they might be able to pay for essentially for people to help others who are in crisis and stuff like that. They're the when those people have a crisis, well, it's just now the responsibility of the law enforcement officer. And let's be real, the law enforcement officer, generally speaking, isn't going out there with the idea of making this situation worse. But as I stated before, you have a uniformed officer with a badge and a gun out there. Just the fact that they are there could be enough to just put somebody over the edge.
Absolutely. So, having this resource is important. I would like to see more diversification in in these sorts of things. I mean, they're not making their own police force, but a sort of a social workforce, I guess we could call it that. And I think using them in this capacity is a good idea. And I might disagree with you a bit. I would say maybe in a lot of situations, they could be the first responder. I mean, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but in situations where there's no threat of violence, or it's somebody losing their mind over something, basically, and they're not a threat to themselves.
The problem is that there is in a lot of these crisis scenarios there typically is a possibility of violence. So I like the idea of just that the officer just is there on scene, but is not the one trying to deal with the person having the emotional issue right now or whatever going on. They are there if they're there to secure the perimeter. They're there if the person escalates. Let's say that we have one of these crisis counselors dealing with an individual who is suicidal, and all of a sudden they just start getting physically violent. I mean that you need at that point in time. That's when I would definitely want to have a law enforcement officer there to help restrain that person. But at least that person had their first interaction with or in that crisis would have potentially been with a crisis counselor who had the opportunity and chance to try and de-escalate that situation.
I mean, as I understand, these crisis counselors do not work solo either. There's a team. There's already a force. And Missoula did this at the same time. This is not part of the. It came out of a different funding block, I believe. I'll have to look at the exact details of which one that is, but it's not out of the police general funding. And we did this at the same time that we increased general police funding. We're getting several new officers on the road.
Yeah, and that. I come from a different perspective on a lot of this stuff than I know that you and Bryce and several others do. But generally speaking, I don't see a problem with that. And that's the big thing is that when it comes to police funding and actually getting officers on board, it takes so long to get an officer trained that if you don't have the funding to keep officers coming in at the rate that they're retiring or moving to other agencies or something like that, you're going to wind up with a scenario where you're going to have inexperienced officers being put in these scenarios, and it's not going to end pretty.
The new police force, but wages, we've discussed that previously as well. I think Missoula for first year officers close to 60, and Great Falls is above 50, and that was a point. Yeah, $50,000 to be and that's just your first year. You get some perks in the second year, and then you get, they don't call it seniority or not seniority, tenure, something after 3 years.
That first year, you're FTO, you're running with your field training officer, so you're not handling that. You're not doing it on your own.
But that's a decent wage, and this is less of a problem in our areas because $60,000 and 50 respectively, right around there, is not terribly far off from the average wage in the area. So the people that are in that community, the officers are in that community, are the ones policing that community, and it makes sense. Yes. But you get to impoverished areas, reservations are an example.
Areas.
Metropolitan and very depressed areas like your very rundown Detroit and other areas where the police are making that wage and everyone else is jobless. It's no longer your people of your community taking care of your community. So maybe a subject for a different cast. We need another Brown cast. We do. I've got a number of my Brown talking points going on. So
Oh man,
But
God,
there's
I wish you didn't keep these things under an hour, man. I could keep going with you like this for a long time.
but there's a lot to discuss. For example, the reservations have taken, statistically, the majority of the COVID cases. I guess a long period of the federal government literally trying to kill you, and then sort of trying to kill you in roundabout ways, wears you down over a couple hundred years. So, no, it's true, and trauma. We have found that trauma can be expressed in genes, and so if your
I believe it.
grandparents had to walk the Trail of Tears and watch their children and grandparents die in front of them, freezing to death with no food, that manifests in the next generation in health and sometimes social or mental problems. So, not to say that they're most of them incredibly resilient, but not say that that's consistent for everybody. But they have found that genetic trauma is a thing. That's some recent genealogical things we discovered. So, with that, and as well as the general condition on a lot of the reservations in the state have led, I think most of the cases in Cascade actually came from Browning at one point, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
I don't know the breakdown of the numbers because there is no breakdown of the numbers, but I knew of at least about 10 and possibly more natives from Browning that were actually hospitalized over at in Great Falls, and they only got benefits over there for inpatient COVID, I think, right? That other place doesn't do it.
Yeah, I don't believe that the I don't honestly know if the clinic hospital has taken any, but I know that Benefice is basically the default for a lot of the majority, if not all, of the COVID cases that are coming in.
Well, I just thought they were the default for everything healthcare over there, but that's
It pretty much is. I mean,
I have a gripe about that other place, but
what's that?
said I have a gripe about that other place, but that's a personal one, not anything relevant. But
Okay.
not to say I'm a fan of any hospital. I'd hope to never be in one, but that's
Yeah.
anyway. Let's
As I understand it, the clinic is a lot more just people who are they're not now. I know that they can take emergent cases, and I know that I do believe that they actually have an emergency department. But I mean, let's be real. Benefice is the Benefice Hospital here is pretty much the one that a lot of these cases are coming to. They're just because they're already set up for it. They already have an entire ward for it, and they do have the capacity to add more if they need to. So,
all right. Well, let's see what other topics we got here, and we're over an hour. Why don't we? I think we covered all the time pertinent news, I guess. Do we have something about bears? Usually something about bears. There's Tent City, something about Great Falls hitting the big time. Is that important?
I don't know, that one was I never even really read that whole thing there, but this Tent City one kind of interests me just because it still has the potential to talk about the COVID thing, because what I do believe that the COVID stuff is really just kind of spreading among the low income primarily, just because they don't have access to a lot of resources and stuff like that to stay healthy and stay clean, stuff like that. I do know that has been an issue.
Well,
so
I don't know about that breakdown. If COVID made any sense, you would be right. If COVID followed any trend that we knew, we would see the homeless, the impoverished being the majority of the people that had it, followed by the people that have to be exposed every day, those essentials, those grocery store workers that see hundreds, if not thousands of people a day. We would see the outbreaks, spreading like wildfire within those essential industries, but that has not happened. And we're not sure why. I've seen several articles on the subject about how we're not sure why the homeless are not, disproportionately disadvantaged in this area.
It's entirely possible. The other thing to consider too is that, yes, there have been deaths and people are still going to die of this disease. If you get symptoms, they suck, and they'll do a number on you, but it's been shown that the overwhelming majority of people who get exposed to it basically don't develop symptoms. And again, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to. This is not me saying that the virus isn't real. It definitely is real. it has and it will continue to kill people for basically from now on. It's in the wild. It's out there. It's something that we're going to have to live with, in perpetuity, just like the flu virus.
Oh, there's a vaccine coming out.
Well,
we're getting it next week. It's coming next week.
Oh man, that vaccine. Hold on. Okay. I was just hearing that let's see, Australia.
KPAX has reported Missoula hospitals could get it as soon as next week. So that's coming up. But very quickly, on that same subject, anyone who makes any conversation on the COVID topic, this is sort of the point I was getting at earlier, where if you maybe question how effective a mask order is without specifying the veracity of the mask or the type of mask, if you make a suggestion that maybe that should have been done, or wearing a piece of cloth over your face isn't not the most effective use of our resources or our trouble here, that you get tossed into, I think, a very red category where people stop listening to you at that point. So if you use any sort of thinking or logic on this, you're automatically one of those people. But also everything I hear, anybody who ever says anything about masks or anything, or questioning numbers or talking about numbers, that same phrase comes out of their mouth. Oh, the virus is real. It's a real thing, and people are dying. Every single time I hear that over and over again. And you're right.
Hold on. Say that again. I want to play back what I just said, and I want to see if you got me quoted correctly here, or if I stuck to the red playbook here. Hold on.
Oh, you have a playback option?
No, I don't.
I know you have a controller there. I just didn't think you had it set up here, but
no. You guys have told me to turn the soundboard. Keep the soundboard off.
Oh,
Chris, don't you dare play with that soundboard. You do that, we're going to do bad things to you, is what you guys told me.
Yes, and we're a serious podcast here.
All serious here.
So
all serious
we'll get back to the vaccine, but we were talking about homeless and how they are apparently, or so I've read, not as affected as we thought they would be, nor the impoverished.
Which is good. I ultimately don't want any one particular category of people to really be affected by this at all. I'm glad. I'm really glad, because that was a big concern earlier in the year here, is that we were going to want is that a lot of communities are going to wind up with people who are low income, and generally not in very good health. We're just going to be absolutely overwhelming the hospital systems, and I think that perspective has been lost in a lot of this discussion. Is that the 15 days to slow the spread was just meant to prevent the hospital systems from getting overwhelmed. And I think the other part of that component is that a lot of people just never really realized how full hospitals typically run anyways.
Well, it's a money-making venture. Of course they're going to run it, 80, 90%. Extra space is lost money.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, like, one of the numbers that people look at is ICU capacity. ICU capacities are typically pretty high. I just in general, they are. But what they were afraid of is that let's say you had a 40-bed ICU facility. And typically you're running 34, 35 of those beds full, right? I'm not quoting any specifics here. I'm just putting up an example for the sake of the example.
All right, because this makes no sense to me. Real quick, I hear conflicting stories about these same facilities. Like, you'll hear, I'm just going to use KRMC, who renamed themselves. They're now something different.
Did they? Really?
Yeah. There's KRMC, and it's KRMC followed by whatever specialty, like home options or remedial health or whatever it is. So now I don't know. It didn't seem important to include, so I didn't include the article. But I have heard that they are, one, laying off nurses and doctors because there's no work for them, and two, that they are at capacity. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. And these articles are coming from the same outlet, so it's not like I'm reading like Red State News or anything, or listening to Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. I'm getting news from real sources that are reporting seemingly conflicting advice. God. Did you listen to that one yet?
Yeah.
It was a wild ride.
Man, dude. Okay, let's not get into an Alex Jones tangent, because you and I could just go back and forth for an hour just talking about Alex Jones.
I had to install Spotify to
great.
listen to this, and I did, and then uninstalled it afterwards. I've been harassed by multiple people saying I need to listen to this. They fact checked him in real time and all that.
Yeah, they did. They
did. The first 2 hours are pretty good and entertaining, and then Alex Jones gets a bit too drunk, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so you can stop about halfway
and then
through.
He's been on. Yeah, okay. I'm not. Go on. Continue your story before I completely derail us.
So you're right about the capacity. I mean, it is a like it or not, a for-profit business. I know they so they're not going to run it with an overly excessive capacity. You're going to run it for the needs of the area. But using your example of that, I understand you just pulled out of the air 40 beds or whatever, because that's what the area generally needs. So they're not going to run a surplus of capacity. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in the case of a pandemic such as today.
Yeah, and so when people look at the numbers that are published for these hospitals and stuff like that, and are just wondering why the bars are going right versus left, just they're going more right than they're going left. You have to take it with a grain of salt, knowing that the majority of these cases at least in the ICU stuff, they're not COVID related. These are people who need intensive care for other reasons. And the big scare that everybody, and just having talked with people who work in medical, the big scare has always been, and even today, it's still a scare because there's a lot of concerns about the COVID vaccine. That let's say that we have that same 30, 35 capacity, or 30, 35 occupancy right now at 40 beds. What if all of a sudden we had a bad day where we had 30 people who all of a sudden need ICU care, and now all of a sudden we don't have the beds? That's what the medical facilities have been trying to avoid. And in the beginning of the year, it was very much just trying to see exactly what was going to happen. And for the majority of Montana, we didn't get hit like the rest of the country did, because nobody really comes up to Montana in the winter, except for those people who are like gonna ski or something like that. So there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for the virus to get up here. But once the tourism season kicked in, and let's face it, with a lot of like fairs shut down, a lot of events shut down nationwide, there really wasn't a whole lot of things for people to do other than travel and go sightsee. And that's really where that's when Montana started getting hit like the rest of the country did. And so now the concern now, again, regardless of my personal opinion regarding masks, I think at this point in time, if for no other reason than to try and prevent a populace that is already on edge about a lot of this stuff, to deliberately aggravate them, I personally say follow your mask mandates as they're laid out, because at this point in time, we're already a populace, I feel, that's already being beaten down, weighed down by everything that's happened in current year, on top of what's going to happen if I get exposed to COVID. Am I going to be feeling it? That sort of thing. I just say, let's just do it, if for no other reason than it just takes one other variable off the table that potentially gets people aggravated and makes an explosive situation happen that might not have otherwise occurred.
Oh, we got the powder keg going on for sure. I think the masks I will discuss their actual efficacy and whether or not specifically whether or not a piece of cloth does anything for anyone. I think it does probably very little. Something I understand, a lot of people will say, oh, the virus is so many nanometers or whatever, and the mask has pores of this size, but as I understand it attaches to water droplets, and that's what you're preventing from getting out. So just logically, I can see how that would work, but also I can see, I don't think it is the end-all solution. It might be part of the solution.
No.
But, the figures show that in areas with masks, such as, everywhere, and I guess all of California as well, that there is still an issue with transmission. In areas where there were lockdowns, the numbers went down, but wasn't exponential, and it wasn't a one-to-one correlation, I should say. So it's not you do one thing, you wear masks, you limit your group sizes, you don't go to church and everything, and the numbers stop, because that's not how it works. So discussing it's dumb, it's simple, it's just easy to put on a mask. Unfortunately, that's where we live. Whether or not you think it's effective, it's literally the least you can do.
Well, and maybe it might help to make this point too. Is that back in like November, people were it wasn't masks were not mandatory, but people were encouraged to wear masks when you went into the stores and stuff like that. And I remember going to Target, and I saw, and not a lot of people were wearing masks. I wasn't. I've got my own opinions about it. But I saw I saw a family walking on by through Target, and this just sticks with me because I remember looking at them, and I remember they were looking around us. It looked like they were just waiting for somebody to like attack them or something like that. And to me, I was just like, who cares? You're making a choice. You've been presented with an option. You made the decision for yourself based on your own assessment of what's going on currently, and that was the decision you made. And to me, that's the way to have it. Is this really the fight? Is this really the fight that we should be having? Is specifically the mask mandate versus some of the other things that may be coming down the pipe? I don't think that it is. In fact, I always kind of wonder personally, like why we didn't have a culture of masking during the flu season and stuff like that, right?
Well, we're not Asian.
Hey now.
It's a cultural thing, and probably with good reason. So,
well, I meant specifically like during like the flu season, right? I mean, maybe it wasn't mandatory, but it was at least, we at least have a culture about it. And I think that's going to be one of the cultural shifts going forward after whenever it is that mandates get lifted, that we're probably going to see that change. And honestly, I think that's fine.
I think it's after the vaccine is when we can start seeing, and a lot of people who, you're sighing. You're sighing about the vaccine.
I am because
you're in the essential group. You're going to be the first to get it.
I'm not essential I didn't want to take it.
Oh.
I told my boss I didn't want to take it yet.
Is that an option? I didn't think it was an option.
They pull, or where I work, they polled us, and I was one of the people that said I decline it. I would prefer not to receive it at this time, is the way I put it.
That is a way to put it. But a lot of people are really jumping. I think part of it is hoping that this is the end of the current purgatory that we're in, is that the vaccine will solve all. And I guess on the list, you have your vulnerable populations are going to be first, and then as well grouped in that, in Montana at least, the essentials, the medical workers, and the probably the service folks that have been out in this entire time. So a big thanks to them for serving us
it's
all the TP we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean here's I don't know, or this is just what happened in Australia, and this I'm gonna flat out say what I'm reading here is just what I'm reading. It is an article in sciencemag.org. It was published, let's see here, December 11th, 10:20 a.m. So today. So here's the headline of it. It says, development of unique Australian COVID-19 vaccine halted. The backers of Australia's homegrown COVID-19 vaccine candidates today announced a halt to its further development after some of the first people to receive the vaccine in a safety trial generated antibodies to an unintended target, the AIDS virus. A small fragment of an HIV protein is a component of the vaccine used to add stability to the intended antibody target, the spike protein of the pandemic coronavirus.
So they gave someone AIDS? Is that what I'm hearing? Or HIV?
Say that again?
So they gave someone AIDS?
Yes.
That's...
Yes.
Huh.
Yes. Now, this is not the Pfizer, Moderna, or the other one right now. This is, as the headline said, Australia's homegrown COVID-19 vaccine candidate. So it's stories like this that make me concerned right now, because
the Monera and the Pfizer ones are a completely different
Yeah.
development, first of all.
Yeah, they are.
And
They're different. I think this one is called an mRNA vaccine, if I remember right.
and there's a lot of fear about this, the COVID vaccine. About
Yeah.
they're putting something in it. Well, that's one, and the more reasonable fear, I think, is that they haven't had the time to develop it. However, looking back at least the flu trends, we've been able to make a somewhat successful. The success varies per year, I think, on the numbers. A flu vaccine for a ever-changing flu virus, a completely new one, and this is in the flu family. So the American healthcare industry being able to develop a vaccine for a flu-like virus within a year is in completely within the realm of possibilities. So maybe that.
I think it is, but I think that's an apples to oranges comparison, because the flu shot, and I think it needs to be distinguished as that, is that it's the flu shot. It's not an actual vaccine. It's meant to help you develop a resistance to what is expected to be the flu strain for that year. The COVID.
It's a very educated guess at best.
The flu shot's been around for a while. The basic formula has been around for a while. It's been worked on over the years. We're talking about an expedited vaccine that we're basically the people taking it right now under emergency use authorization are what's called the phase 3 trial. Now I've made the personal assessment that, having looked at all the risk factors for it and considering my own personal health, I put on my little survey that I did not want to receive it at this time, because I based on what I'm seeing, I am not I'm not a high risk candidate, or I'm not a high risk individual for contracting COVID. I could still do it, but I could always beat the odds, and then buy a lottery ticket, or buy the Montana Millionaire lottery ticket. But I want to. It's not that I want to. It's not that I'm expecting there to be issues with it for the most part. I am certain that there are going to be some unintended reactions. I want, as somebody who is not in an immediate need for this vaccine, I want to see what happens with the people who are in immediate need and are willing to take the vaccine. I want to see what happens. I want to see, generally speaking, what happens with those people before basically deciding whether or not I want to get it in a subsequent round.
Well, let's say very, I guess, conservative approach to that. So, but if you're told to get the vaccine, barring unfortunate circumstances,
then I'll have to do it. If my employer requires that I get it, I'll have to get it. And
what if Montana tells you to get it? Or the federal government?
I think this is what scares me about that, right? Is that we already have case law that has gone through the federal courts where basically people can turn down vaccines and stuff like that if they have, I think one of the exceptions is genuinely held religious beliefs and stuff like that. I believe the idea of mandating because this is my perspective on it. If the government tells you to do it, that you are required to do it, the government is doing it at the barrel of a gun, because that is the power that they have to enforce their rules and laws. They can cite you, they can arrest you, they can jail you, and if you may wind up dead resisting the government. That's just the way it is. And I feel like a government that is saying our entire population must do this, what kind of precedent does that set for other things? That's my concern.
Well, I'm with you there. Well, there's one. That's the point I have made numerous times, that every single minuscule, dumb, jaywalking, maybe even stupid, maybe even wrong law on the books is enforceable by death. Every single one, including this one if we mandate a vaccine. But I think the more likely route is they will make your life nearly impossible if you choose not to get it, such as you can't send your kids to school, you can't go to a public gathering, maybe even to go as far as, you don't need to travel if you don't have a vaccine, you don't need a driver's license. So that, I project that will be likely the route they take.
I would say that whatever political group makes that a rule, don't be surprised when it's applied to other areas. To me, that is I really don't want to get into that because that argument, because that's a whataboutism argument, in my opinion.
Not about what
Because
about. It's what we do right now with the vaccines that we have for polio, smallpox, and etc. If you
yeah,
don't
but
have
I don't
them,
have
if
to
your
have a
kids don't
polio
have,
vaccine to travel between state lines.
not yet, but your kid has to have it to go to school, and there's no way
Okay.
around that.
Yeah, you are correct. So then where does that stop? Where does it stop?
Well, so far it's stopped there, thankfully. Well, we're the country of freedom, So
That to me that's the ultimate question is what are we going to say you can't do if you don't have this vaccine? And right now I think we're so hyper polarized right now, and I feel that hyperpolarization has spawned a movement that says basically, because like, what do they do? They're doing like in China right now, where you have to have an app on your phone, your government, basically your government issued cell phone, your government mandated cell phone that you have to have, and in order for you to board a train or do anything at all, you have to present your QR code or whatever that shows that you've had this vaccine or something similar there. And I'm like, is that, to me, if they can do it for that, then I would say don't be surprised when eventually over time another political ideology comes into power and applies that same logic to something else.
Well, that's the same thing I said during the Obama years, where when he was met with an opposition from the Republican Senate and House and seemingly not able to get anything done, he almost directly said, well, I have a pen and pad. And then he really started an executive order stream. And the precedent that was set, and that was
Right.
challenged and proving that he does have that authority in that regard, eventually got into the hands of Donald Trump. So great while you're in power, maybe not so. Think about 4 years into the future, at least, of
Correct.
who is in charge, who holds the reins.
Yeah, like I don't want to I don't want to dissuade people who feel like, who have genuine heartfelt who are genuine concern that again, like for example, that your kids need to have a COVID vaccine because you don't want them to get sick or anything like that. And I feel like that sort of thing needs to be put up for a debate, needs to go through process, and it's going to get challenged. It's going to get put through the courts. But I think that is the process that needs to happen. I really feel like just mandating it from an executive branch only is the wrong decision, even if the judgment is right, because the ends to me never justify the means.
Well, I might agree with you somewhat on that, but I kind of see Biden as a loose cannon on a number of things, more loose than Trump. He's a wild card, and things that he says and things that he may or may not do.
Don't you know he's got the best advisor in the world, Corn Pop.
Oh, jeez.
It's gonna be his chief of staff.
That was a hilarious video. Somebody showed it to me just a week ago. How did I not hear about that? And if I say get off the board, you get off the board.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they used to drag their knives along the to get them all rusty along the street, along the curb. What a different time! It's for those that don't know, look up Corn Pop YouTube. It's hilarious. It's Biden
Corn Pop Joe
speaking
Biden YouTube.
very off the cuff and just being hilarious on this subject, and make your own. It'll fall into whatever worldview you already have. I guarantee it. So.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. And like I said, there's two different camps here. There's the side that says, well, you don't have a right to get, I have a right to not be exposed to whatever you got there. And then there's the other side that says, well, you can't make me do it. Both sides are wrong. Both sides are wrong. You have no, for example, you have no right to not be exposed, to not be exposed to the person who didn't wash their hands when they left the bathroom or whatever. That's just a fact of life. And as you so adroitly pointed out, and I feel it's a very good point to be made, is that, for example, in order for your kids to go to public school, there is a series of vaccinations they have to be up to date on. You are absolutely correct. So, and that is obviously worked through the process. And that process resulted in the idea that people, it resulted in exemptions like people who have genuinely held religious beliefs, whether you feel that they're valid or not, is not the point. Is that they've signed a piece of paper that says they genuinely feel that way. Now we let that go because the vast majority of the people or the kids who have attended those colleges come from families who have made the decision to have those vaccinations given to their children. So you wind up with a level of herd immunity that essentially lets both sides be happy,
Well, you'd think,
just mock each other from afar.
Real quick, the mind is a beautiful thing. I mean, you talk about washing your hands when you're in the bathroom. And I don't know if you ever caught yourself forgetting, but think of how many times you've forgotten your car keys in the house, not taking your cell phone with you. Small stuff that gets filtered out by your brain that you completely forget about. How many times have you not washed your hands after number 2? You don't know. Anyway.
You don't want me to answer that question.
Oh, you have numbers.
I have the hugest of numbers, the most beautiful numbers.
Anyway, well, let's, I guess, end on a gross topic. We're about an hour and a half into this. It is always a great time with you, Chris. This is why we brought you back by popular demand.
Hey, as I'll come back anytime you guys want me to come on back. I'm absolutely happy to come back anytime.
Well,
but since we forgot to completely do this last episode, I remember pointing this out to you at the end. I said, you guys did not let me plug anything at all. And I tried to sneak it in there a couple of times.
I will give you the platform right now.
So again, you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com. I think it's /c/fullmanagaming is on there. On Twitch, I'm at twitch.tv/manaonline. I'll have our, probably by the time this goes up, I'll have a new schedule for streams and stuff like that. So you can interact with me there. I'm also on Twitter at manaonline_.
All right. Well, that concludes what I think is number 45. Coming up next week, me and Bryce will be back on the platform. We are going to be together on the road, but in the same spot. What a time to be alive that'll be. Yeah, we even secured we secured somebody's garage that has several pieces of foam already on the wall.
Is it heated? Or are you going to be bringing in a fireplace for it?
Oh my goodness. I am freezing right now. My garage has a fireplace. And a fireplace takes about 8 hours to warm up the place. And it's right by this Mercedes in the corner. So it's good at warming up the Mercedes. But that's about it. And
all right. Well, thanks.
I asked you about a couple hours ago.
I appreciate coming back. Like I said, I'll come back anytime you guys want me to.
Pleasure as always. And the business here, you know where to find us. We got our main webpage. If you just Google Montana Voices Podcast, our first link is our webpage, followed by our Facebook, and then our YouTube. So you know where to find us. Thanks for tuning in.